afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining us at the studio for our weekly Wednesday speaker series. As you know, we hold these every week, and there's live streamed on Facebook. So if you miss anything, please feel free to check up on it afterwards. They'll be up there for a couple of days. Today we have the joy of welcoming Bachir Al-Khoury. Bachir is the MD of Limpid Logic, and he's going to do a talk today on how technology makes us more human. So if you wouldn't mind putting your hands together, please, for Bachir. Thank you.
Thank you. So hi everyone, and thanks for taking the time to eat, because lunch is very important. And at the same time, hope I'll give you some more food for thoughts, pun intended, just about technology and my background in general, and the role of startups and why I think it's so important to actually nourish them and have them. So my name is Bachir Al-Khoury. I'm the managing director of a company called Limpid Logic. And a few years back, we've also set up a group. So there are multiple companies. But I'm very passionate about technology, because I truly believe that technology makes us more human. And maybe, hopefully, I'll convince you by the end of this. So feel free to follow me on any social media as Bachir Al-Khoury. And I've got bachiralkhoury.com, where I'm be sharing a lot of my journey and how kind of building, technology that's trying to change the world. I tried to do a lot of public speaking in the past. I've spoke at some events at Vivid. I've been an instructor for augmented reality courses. You might have seen with Academy XI and AIT. And the idea is to try to encourage people, one, to look at technology in a different angle than most people do. And second, to try to get as many people excited about it, taking the first step and building their own inventions using software and technology. So this is the Limpid Group, some of my companies I've built. Limpid Properties, the youngest, and that's where we're trying to change how we design, build, and sell properties. So we develop different software for architects and property developers to do certain analysis on their development. Limpid Entertainment, where we've got a few contracts for gaming contracts, mostly developing games. And Limpid Logic, which is the oldest of all, which I'll be talking about today. And that's the innovation lab. That's where we go and tinker and stitch things together, write some code, and then something might explode, and hopefully not. And then we take those ideas and sell it to companies that actually need them. But just to go back, I came to Australia about 14 years ago, and I come from a war-torn country called Lebanon. So Lebanon is a small country in the Middle East, and all throughout, I was born in the 80s, so all throughout the 80s and 90s, we've witnessed one of the most vicious wars that was all inclusive. A lot of people had to go through the independence war, as they call it, just to drive other forces out. And at the same time, we witnessed the civil war that's gone to the early 90s. And this image in particular is very special to me, because do you know who are these two people in that photo? Because I have no idea either. I've actually downloaded this from the internet. But I just wanted to show you how our basement used to look like. All buildings across the country used to used to fill up all these bags full of sand, just so each time you hear the whistle of the bombing passing through, you just have to run down to the basement. A dark place where only candles would work. Electricity there was only allowed for 2 hours a day. So you couldn't do much in terms of entertainment. So for about my first 12 years of life, I had to get really creative into finding the good things in life, or the things that would entertain me. And creativity is the only thing that really creeps on you in the dark. There's nothing much to do. So I tried to observe the world from a different perspective, to try to find what's fun, or try to find that glimpse of light when there wasn't much happening outside. So my dad was, and still is, an electrician. And back in the 80s and 90s, in a country where there wasn't much technology happening, he used to go and renovate banks And banks in those times were the only companies that actually have the lights on and that had to adopt technology. And computers were one of the first to, sweep out, and they were the first businesses to adopt personal computers and actually use them for work. And one day my dad came back in the late 80s and he brought, he was an electrician renovating banks, and he brought the first personal computer. So when they were renovating the banks, every few years they changed the entire technology or changed their entire computers and infrastructure to keep upgrading. And one of the managers told him, just take one of those computers, we're going to throw them anyway. Just take one for your son. I was about 8 at that time. And that computer doesn't even have a hard drive. It just comes with a 3.5-inch floppy drive. And all you can do on it is program in language called Pascal at the time and BASIC. So I got really immersed into trying to understand how to communicate to it. It didn't come with a manual. It came with a floppy drive with some programs that just to try to teach you how to code. And I got basically obsessed with this machine. You can talk to it, you just put some input, you type certain things and get almost immediate feedback and see how you're doing. A few years later, a program came out called 3D Studio. Most of you are familiar with it now as 3D Studio Max. But at the time it was 3D Studio R1 and R2 and R3, and it only operates under DOS. That was before Windows. And I became really obsessed because in that program you can create 3D computer graphics or 3D art. By punching a few numbers or clicking a few buttons, you can actually create anything you can imagine. Now we take all of that for granted with all the latest CGIs and the movies and the Lord of the Rings and everything that flies around. I used to spend countless hours, 2 hours chunks per day, while the electricity is there, to try to create something. So by the age of 16, I became completely immersed into that world where no one dies. It was all under your control. Getting emotional now. It was a world under my control and under other people's control where only good can happen. And there are no real consequences for the bad that could be in that world. So typing on that keyboard every night was my gateway, just to escape to a place where I could just create better things. So that's where that whole passion came. So I came to software and technology from the screen, or what you call like from the user experience for most people. And computer graphics was where it all started. I just wanted to create better looking things, things that just work. Fast forwarding till now, to 9 years ago, I started Limpid Logic because I truly believe that technology makes us more human. And I've decided to focus the company on creating software that empowers people on the ground. So this is technology that does things for you when you're doing your work without interfering, or things that talks to other things, which is called the Internet of Things, sensors that measures hydration in your body, or certain things, measures the elements that inform you about certain things. And Limpid Logic is a team of passionate, well, that was the goal, is to create an environment where I could attract talent just like me. People are really passionate about art and design and software and technology and games. People who just want to build better things. And I thought if I could just attract them into that environment and nourish them, we could create something really special that I would go out and sell it, and we'll get someone in to kind of invest in us and bring in the money, and so I can provide for those minds and people. So I see us just like this guy. We're at the forefront of technology. And by being at that front, there's responsibility, because you see things that they could be the gimmicks or things that are completely useless. But just because it's software and it's cool doesn't mean when you come back to the world and try to sell it that they're going to actually use it. And that's why in many ways, I see that technology and software has a bad rap because a lot of developers, or some people call us geeks, they truly believe that we are disconnected from the real world and that we just, like to code stuff, but we just don't understand how to use it. But I feel that is not true. Technology has come so close to the real world that the bridge is much narrower. If you're a developer today, you're also the designer. And if you're a designer today, you should be also a developer. Just so your understanding of your both words can really expand and build something that's useful. So I see us as like the hikers of the digital world. On a day-to-day basis, we're just learning new things, experimenting with new technologies, and try to find those gems in that digital world that we can come back to the present to give it to companies that want to go to that future. And like Terence McKenna says, technology is the real skin of our species. A lot of people still look at technology as the foreign thing that happened elsewhere, and it's just been thrown upon us that we have to just deal with it. You hear words like, I just don't get technology, I don't understand it, or tech stuff that's for the young kids to, they're very good at technology, but we are not. But you have to start to think of technology not as something, it's a someone. It's a human just like us who found a problem somewhere and went through the effort of learning and inventing and trying different things to solve that problem. So when companies start to look at technology as this separate thing that I want to adopt because, we have to train everyone to use it, or it's like this annoying thing that's trying to eat you, but you have to move, start to think about it as this is an annoying one. This is your competitors or the market that is just sweeping through or climbing that wave of evolution that you cannot stop and you cannot resist. This is like trying to stand in the middle of a tsunami and thinking that I'm not going anywhere. You're just going to be swooped out because look at it as a human evolution. It's the next generation of us. We created technology to solve real problems as well as create new ones. However, that technology is going back to create us, to expand our lifespan, to make the blind see or the crippled walk. You start to see that every day you wake up, there's this amazing news about something 3D printed that got installed in someone's head or a limb that makes him walk or hear or talk. So that whole magic is really like the drawing hand. We are the hand drawing itself. And this is where I mean that we are the creator and the created. We imagine things, we put them out in the world, and then someone else would see it, or even us. It could be art or software or app or technology, and then that changes our perception of the world and what's possible. And we go in that infinite loop, and that's why the speed of evolution or of technology we've seen has been going much further, because now we know what's possible. So I'm going to share with you some of the lessons I've learned. And this looks like a good book to read. I haven't read it, but that was a nice image on Unsplash. But that communicates basically, I just want to try to share some of the lessons I've learned building software teams or technology teams, gaming teams. And hopefully, they will give you a perspective or at least show you a different path, or maybe I'll give you new questions to ask. Lesson 1, as cliche as it sounds, time is money. Or rather, I should say time is value. We just happen to be humans that we measure value with money, that we kind of created this concept because how else can I measure what I've got to what you've got, and is that fair? And I just want to share how I think we can create value, especially as startups or businesses. Take any business or industry. They deliver value to a customer or someone. They solve someone's problem. And think of time. Every business takes time to deliver value to a customer. They've got, if you take every single process, what does it take for a lawyer to draft my contract? Or what does it take for a doctor to perform a surgery. And take each one of these steps in any particular process, industry or startup. If you are able to shorten the amount of time they spend on some of the tasks, or if you're able to eliminate those using technology or using your startup, then you've created value. And that value you've created is in proportion to the value of that business is providing. What I mean by that is that you are welcome to draft your own contract, let's just say. But it's going to take you maybe, I'll rephrase that. If you think that time is money or time is value, the reason we pay a doctor a lot of money because he's saving all the time you've got, which potentially could be your life. So time is the most valuable assets really we've got in this life. You go to a lawyer to draft up a contract just because you don't want to study 2 or 3 years to figure out how to write it. You're buying time. And similarly, when you go to a software developer, try to solve different problems, you hire them because you don't want to spend the effort of learning a free programming language, which they're all available, but it's just going to take you time. I don't want to spend 10 years to be able to build the software. I'll hire someone, I'll pay him. The amount I pay him or the value I trade is equal to the value I'll be getting. The only problem is people don't value their time equally. The other problem is not every problem is worth solving. So as a startup, when you look at solving other businesses' problems or people problems, you really have to think really hard whether that's worth solving. Some problems are just meant to be left alone because the effort it requires to solve it is not equal to the, let's just call it gratification you're going to get back. People don't care whether you solve the problem of watching too much Netflix. That's what they want to do. And there are some businesses that are big enough that they don't really care about you saving them those, whatever, few hours per week. So when you structure your business or startup, you really have to think, who are you solving this for? And whether they're going to appreciate the time benefit you've given them. So that's why I like this quote. Try not to become a person of success. Rather become a person of value. So startup don't actually start to create a business just because they got bored at the job and they feel that's it, I want to do my own thing. I want to get rich. I'm starting my own company. Thinking that, okay, that's the goal. And once you start your own company, everything else is going to come. You have to start to think, how can I create value in the world? You could start your business while you're still at the job. It's just in your head. You can start to create things and sell things or help people. And if you're lucky enough that they would pay you more than it would cost you to help them, then you've got a business. So lesson number 2, I'm sure all of you have heard this, Richard Branson. When it comes to business success, it is all about people, people, people. So I wonder how many of you agree with that statement? Because I don't. It's not about people when you first start a startup, because a startup is not a business. But we often fool ourselves thinking that I'm in business now. A startup, personally, I think it's just an idea looking to be born. This is your startup. It's just an idea, a baby trying to find its feet, trying to learn how to walk and talk. But often, when we start our companies, we start to compare ourselves to other existing companies, thinking that the whole ground is leveled. You start building your website, you start to look at Coca-Cola's website or Telstra's website. Oh, let's see what these guys are doing. And you try to copy them, thinking all of a sudden that you're newborn, or comparing it to, let's say, an 18-year-old adult who is fully functional, they've had experience, they've got the leverage and positioning in the market. So one of the biggest mistakes which frustrates founders and drives them to depression or just to make all sort of mistakes, they think that they have to take shortcuts to become an adult. When you're crawling, a few months old, you can't reach the top shelf to get the cookie. And you really need to be self-aware of that. That's why I love this one. Don't compare yourself to others. Compare yourself to who you were yesterday, not to who someone else is today. And with this idea, you start to live. Don't worry about business. You start to live every day just comparing whether you've improved anything or not, whether you're walking backwards or not. And all you have to do is just stay working on yourself. Because at the end of the day, like I said, the startup is only an idea. And the business that's going to come out of it is going to be equal to how good you are as a founder, as a team. Lesson number 3, you've heard this so much, especially in the startup world. Fake it till you make it. Yeah, don't do that. And the reason you shouldn't do that is while others might not know that you are faking it or that you are not as big as you say you are, you know. And that's the worst thing you can know when we're already born full of insecurities, and on top of that you go and add one. Not only one within your network, you go advertising it. When you start as a startup and selling your projects to a company, be as authentic as you can. Just play on your strength rather than make up stuff you don't really stand up for. People will see through you. You're not fooling anyone. I don't know if you know that lady, Elizabeth Holmes. The Steve Jobs, or the most recent Steve Jobs, she founded her company when she was just 19, a company called Theranos. She managed to fool $724 million worth of VC money. In 2015, her net worth was estimated by Forbes for $4.5 billion. In 2016, zero. So what she did was faking it for 13 years, faking it. And I don't blame her, because there's this whole big hype, this success stage startups try to set up from day one. They think we have to get on stage, buy all the BS PR we can get, and just pretend that we've actually made it, we're on to the next big thing. Why? Because their goal is to raise money, which now gets me to the second point, which is lesson 4. You don't need money to make money. Figure something out, then ask for money. I don't know, for me, raising money tells me that the startup itself, especially before it has figured it out, there are so many people in startups that come to us to kind of build their own next revolutionary app. They're not even invested in. They're so scared of time that their goal is to raise money so they can get started. This is like saying, I'm not taking any risk, but how about you give me money so I can figure it out? And if I don't figure it out, tough luck for you. But look, we can all get together and we can build something really cool that you think it's cool. I would say just go out to the world, spend your own time. If you don't know how to do it, learn. If you don't know who can build it, find one. Figure it out first. And that goes out to my first point. Figure out how can I save someone something valuable, or the most valuable thing, which is time. And I've got another thing about entertainment. So many startups like to build cool things that the world doesn't need, just to spam the app store with 100 dozen crappy apps that no one cares about, but they do care about, and their mom cares about. And Uncle John said, it's a great idea, go do it. Their shortfalls is that they have not done the research. Most of them think just because they've got the idea that everyone else is an idiot. It's like, how can they not have thought about it? And only when they come to the point where they have to pay for it, to build it, they go doing the research to find that there were like 5 companies doing that like 20 years ago. And they all flopped for a good reason. No one cares about bumping fists to share beer at the pub. It's like, oh, it's your turn to buy the next beer. That's why I think you hear that a lot. Just find the problem, try to solve. And a lot of people think, well, how do I find one? And like I said, pick any industry, any company, any process, reduce the amount of steps they have to take to get to the customer to sell something. That step is your money. You can save them time, you'll get money for that. Lesson 5, I think that's the last one. I hear this so many times. And I think that comes from the arrogance of the founder that thinks he made it if, dad gave him $5,000 to start a business. I hear that a lot. They say, oh, you don't understand. I want to work on the business, not in the business. When you're a startup, you don't have a business. So wipe that out. You're going to be doing both all the time. You're just figuring something out. Just go back to that point. So you have to get your hands really dirty because starting the business, or at least bringing the idea to life, is going to take you places that you can't even hire someone to go there. So when people think, I just want to work on the business, not in the business, that's already a clear indication that they don't know what they're building or why they're building it. They start to play CEOs too early, drafting all these nice financial spreadsheets and budgeting and organizational charts, just thinking, look, this is the big picture. I need to stay here, so I can't really learn how to code or build my website. So that's why I need money, so I can hire those people that do it, because I'm a CEO. You don't understand. It's like you just quit your job yesterday. How about you come talk to me 8 years later when you've broken every single tooth you've got, trying to battle yourself out in a market, create value to this world. And finally, I just want to leave it with this point. I'm probably very short on time, but I've got a few other things I'll show you, some of the work we've done. Or we can just open it up for questions, because I would love to, engage. Don't ask what the world needs. Ask instead what makes you come alive. Because what the world needs is more people who have come alive. So I will leave you to that, because a lot of our pursuits start from an external motivation. We just see something someone has done and think, wow, I could do that. Or, I need to build my fortune. I'm going to get rich, so I need to be my own boss. When you start a business, you're not your own boss. You're everyone else's servant. So you don't start it for your own advantage. You start it to see how many people can I help? How many businesses can I fix? And eventually, you become the one that people would go to, that torch light in the dark that people could gravitate around, then you can fix them. So don't start a business for your own pursuits. And I think that's the reason why they say 9 out of 10 startups fail, because they started for the wrong purpose. And if you don't have a strong purpose, nothing will get you through hell. And thank you. Okay. So
Does anyone have any questions?
Any questions?
Come on, someone's got to kick us off.
Yeah, that's fine. Thank you. I know Bachir for many years already, but I think one thing that I would like to say, I think you said a lot about problems, and I believe that that's my personal belief as well. So in startups, I think it's really hard to differentiate problems and pain, and that's sometimes like a lot of startups don't understand that too. So focus on a problem, but usually that problem is not a pain for someone. So I just want to hear your thoughts on problems versus pain. Like how you solve that in your projects.
Yeah, so there's a thing venture capitals or investors like to, well, they like so much, which is, painkiller versus vitamin. And when they judge a startup or an idea, they immediately try to put it in these two categories. Are you either a painkiller or a vitamin? A vitamin is something you take because, you think it works, but you're not really sure. You can't really measure if it's fixing you or not. You take it anyway. But a painkiller, you'd pay millions of dollars for this one pill if it could save your life or if it just gets rid of that pain. So the hard part is how can you differentiate both or differentiate them from each other? And that's where that research and that journey, often as a founder, you start with your own domain. You'll be working at a job or you've got a certain passion that you've mastered. So if you put yourself in the center of that circle, your point of influence is quite narrow, but you're expert in it. Your perspective to it is much bigger than most people because you specialized in it. So you either take your circle or expertise and see which other company have that, and then through that lens of your expertise, you can start to identify the problems you might have. Or naturally, startups or even founders, we're like planted seed. You just grow on your own ground. And as you become bigger master of your craft, or you're learning more and widening your perspective, you start to cover more ground. And as you cover more ground, you're like a magnet. You start to attract the problems without you even knowing. I like the analogy I've learned from, or at least I formed from a book called The Philosopher and the Wolf. Excellent book, and I think everyone will get it differently. He learned from the wolf that the wolf lives in the moment. While humans will live in a linear fashion, we're like here and there's a tree and we need to walk that path to get the goal and we get it, we're not happy, we need to get to the next one, to the next one, to the next one. Almost looks like this linear graph that we're walking towards. But what I've formed from that book is that we're always in one spot. We're not walking anywhere. And by working on yourself, and like I said, compare yourself to who you were yesterday, not to who someone else is today, you're just making yourself stronger and stronger and stronger. You become a magnet. And as your magnet grows, all you have to focus is on how can I get better today? As your magnet grows, you start to attract the gold as well as the bigger problems. And I think that's in general in life. As you master your craft, and that could be not just one skill of, let's just say, coding or design or art. You master your networks. You master how you communicate. You master everything about you that makes you this light in the dark. You will attract those problems. And that's often when you get that phone call you did not expect. Someone's got a problem that happens that you know. And all of a sudden, all you have to do is like glimpse at it for 1 second to realize that you already know the answer that they've been looking for years. So I would say, don't go out, well, I've said it before, looking for problems. It's not a looking out game, it's a looking in game. Look, how can you improve yourself, skills, master it, and the problems will find you. And as you solve smaller problems, you grow. As you're eating and sucking the good and the bad, you are growing as a human being. And that's how you'll find those real hard problems, and your perspective is widened. You've got all the expertise. You're the ninja of that space. And people who want you will know how to find you, because the word of mouth will kind of transport you to the greatness you want to get in.
Anyone else? No one else? All right. Look, if nobody else has a direct question, Bashir will be around for another few minutes.
Yeah,
If that's all right?
Yeah, I'm
And you
around.
can talk to him one-on-one. But otherwise, I'd like to thank you all for coming. And if you could all put your hands, please, together.
Thank you.